Yeah.
I think also humans are not designed to be solos and to live alone and or to be alone in the world. And I think marriage is, for most is the way that they form a bond with someone else, and that makes sense.
Yeah, you're saying, because not everybody could hear that, you were saying that we're not meant to be alone, and marriage recognises that need for us to form a relationship with another. It's an interesting thought, because there's neither husband nor wife in heaven. So when you say we're not meant to be alone, well, we're not meant to be alone, but in the next life, God is enough for us. And that raises an interesting thought about marriage then being something of a temporary thing, that is temporary until death, temporary at death, I should say.
I think it's like a stage, like that together you get yourself and your family to heaven. I mean, that's.
So marriage is the ticket to heaven. It's a nice idealised idea of marriage, but where my thinking was going with that was the idea of being alone. The image there I've given you, there are two images there of Adam and Eve, but the one at the top right hand side of the page, where Adam is kind of turning from his original solitude, so to speak, his aloneness, and recognising the woman, recognising the other, and being attracted to her. It's an attractive picture. And that realisation. But there are two concepts there. One is the concept of being alone with God, so to speak, and relating to God. And then there's the concept of relating to another. And so the question for us is, as human beings, is how do we work with those two concepts? The relationship to another, the expression of love for another, and the gift of self to another, and the attraction to another, and the love for God. And which is more important, your love for God or your love for your spouse?
You could argue, I'm not saying this is my view, you could argue love for your spouse, because if not for that, none of us would be here today.
Yeah, God doesn't make us choose, which is pretty thankful. That is, we don't have to choose between God and our spouse. And I guess the way that we think about it in marriage is the crucial thing is that complete gift of self, which is a witness to God's love. And clearly God's design for us to make a gift of self, that's the way human beings are designed, in terms of the nature of man or the nature of woman, that they're made for each other, not just in a biological sense. And so that's obviously part of God's design. But what's quite important there is that earlier notion of sacrament, the idea of that gift of self and that expression of love being a witness to God's love, and drawing us to God through that. So one of the crucial things, if you're thinking about when you wanting to marry somebody, crucial thing to ask yourself is will this person bring me closer to God? Is the love that we have for one another a God-like love? Will this union that we form, this relationship that we form, really be a love like the love between the persons of the Trinity? So this is a love that is bound up with your love for God. So it's not that there's either or, love for God or love for a spouse. It's that the vocation of a married person, or the vocation to a marital life, is a vocation to love God in this particular way. And one of the richnesses of married life, I guess, is what we call complementarity. That is, in finding in the other those things that are not in yourself. So each of you are made in the image and likeness of God. Each of you like God, but each of you like God in a different way. And I guess in the unfolding mystery of the other, there's the discovery of the person of God, because that person's made in the image and likeness of God. And so that the unfolding mystery of that love, the deepening of that love with the other person, brings you closer to God because that person is made in the image and likeness of God. So marriage then is a very rich relationship. We talk about people too, you know, the old notion of what's called carnal knowledge, or knowledge of the body of the other. It's a very rich notion within Christian tradition. It's a rich notion within marital understanding, because we're not made in the image and likeness of God just as souls or spirits. As bodies, we instantiate the image and likeness of God. And so as human beings, we are made in the image and likeness of God in an embodied way. And so that love for the other and that gift to the other in an embodied way is part of that expression of the love of God, part of that expression of witness to the image and likeness of God. The depth of a relationship and a marital relationship is a gift at all levels, at a spiritual level, a psychological level, an emotional level, and a bodily level. It's a complete gift. We don't experience reality except as bodies, and we experience love as bodies, and we give love as bodies. So the significance of the gift of self in marriage is not just that you found a soulmate, not just that you found a great friend, but that you found somebody to whom you can give yourself completely, give yourself in the intimacy of a sexual relationship. And so the sexual relationship then itself becomes an expression of the love that God has for us and that the persons of the Trinity have to each other. It becomes an expression of love in itself. So it's not something apart from it, it's fully an expression of who we are as made in the image and likeness of God. So it's quite important to look at the sexual relationship and to look at what we call eros, which is the desire for that other person, the desire to be loved by that other person, and to see in that desire to be loved by that person God's love, what we call agape. Agape and eros are facets of the same love. The desire to be totally united with that other person, for them to give to you and you to give to them in complete gift to each other. And so that God's love embraces both eros and agape. God's love embraces human sexual love, human sexual relationship. And that's what makes a sexual relationship, in our understanding, a very important relationship. It's why, I think it was Peter Singer who said that sexual ethics is no more important and perhaps a little less important than the ethics of driving a car. I guess what we're saying is that driving a car and a total gift of self to another person in imitation of God's love are rather different things. And the gift of self in that way is rather more important than driving a car.
I don't quite understand that. Sorry, what was that?
Peter Singer uses, in terms of sexual ethics, remember Peter Singer, you know the philosopher Peter Singer? He wrote a review of a book that was on bestiality, that he's having sex with animals. And when he was criticised for being supportive of this book, because he basically said that sex with animals was okay as long as the animal didn't suffer. When he was challenged with that, he said that if you think about sexual ethics, and you think about the ethics of driving a motor car, the ethics of driving a motor car are far more important than the ethics than sexual ethics. Now, what he was saying there, I guess, is that motor cars can kill people, so can sex. But the point I'm making is that these are vastly different things, and that sexual expression is far more important because it is that total gift of self, and it is a way in which you express the love of God, and the way in which you express God's love and give witness to God's love. Nothing could be more important than your total gift of self to another person. And so that's the central thing with it. So that's why I think certainly within the Christian tradition, we treat sexual ethics very seriously. We regard sexual relationships very seriously because they have such power for unity, but they also have such a power of expression of total gift of self to another. And it's that's what makes it so important, and why we think about saying, well, because this is the language of love, because this is the language of total gift of self to another, it's very important that we make sure it's in the right context where somebody can give themselves totally to another and are free to and are willing to.